Okay, now we'll move on to the volume DATR standard deviation inverted indicator. I added a few things. I removed the limiter and I replaced it with these, which I'll explain what these are. And then I added a few input modes. These can cause a dramatic effect on how it responds. I think that's basically it. The rest of it works as usual, but I'm going to tag on the earlier video at the end of this for those who haven't seen it. This is for the DATR, directional ATR input. Anyway, these settings, some of them can change the response of the system, like that right there. You need, like if you chose that, you'd probably want to lower this. You'll have to play with those. I like the high minus the low. That's a good one. And this is the standard one. The next thing I added was this DATR previous open distance mode to the indicator. When it's enabled, this is an ATR setting. This is the period for the ATR. This is the multiplier. And in an uptrend, in order for the up amount to be used, the close has to be above the previous open by this ATR amount. And we'll turn this off so you can see what it does. Okay, see, it's a lot different. You can see these levels are pretty consistent there. And say if we change this to 50, the 50 ATR period, times the ATR, it removes a lot of the noise. I'll back this out a little bit. Like see in here, it gets to zero pretty quickly. And it does seem to like, a little larger candles, but it removes a lot of the noise. The other thing that I added, and this is sort of like the limiter part, I just replaced it with candle height. So if you get these really big candles, sometimes it really throws things off. Let's find a big candle. Like here, this one, that's kind of a big one. I'll put a line. So what you can do here is we'll make this 50, and what it's going to do is it's going to limit the height of that candle to 1 times the ATR, or whatever you have right here. 50 period ATR, whatever that value ends up being, you will limit that candle to that amount. And you'll probably have to go through and change the inverted multiplier and the band's deviation, and then probably the minimum level. Get rid of a lot of noise that way. I think that's it. The rest of this video is going to be the previous video I did on this indicator. So that's it. This video is about the cQ-Volume DATR standard deviation invert indicator. It's this indicator down here. It's a volume indicator. And when a blue bar is drawn, then there's enough volume for a possible buy. If a orange bar is drawn, then there's possibly enough volume for a sell. This indicator is very similar to the WAE, except that the WAE uses the MACD, where this one uses the directional ATR. And all the directional ATR is just if the candle closes above the open, it goes into the up buffer. If the candle closes below the open, then it goes in the down buffer. That is then fed into this moving average you have defined here with this period. That's what's drawn here. That's what these bars are. And then down here, depending on this, if you have a single or dual, right now it's a dual channel, these bands will be drawn. When the blue crosses above this blue line, then it draws a brighter color. If the orange crosses above the red line, then it draws a brighter color, meaning, again, there's enough volume. This line here is minimum level. So it has to also be above that line in order to draw a brighter color. This adaptive period is based on the ATR. As the ATR goes up, the period becomes shorter, so it makes it a little faster, and you can select, you can disable it, or you can use the indicator period if you have it set there, or you can use a user select period, which is this one if you have that selected. This steepness, if you make this say 5, it will shorten the period even more. And you can see, like, that's probably a little too much, it's a little too choppy. 2 is the default. You can put it to 1 and it will stretch it out a little bit. But we'll leave it back here at 2. And you'd be surprised at how much change the applied price can cause just by changing that. So don't forget to try that. These are just the various parameters for these moving averages up here. Next we have the bands mode. I guess I should mention now, this used to have about 8 different modes in here, and depending on the mode, it would change what these parameters did. I think it just got too confusing, so that's how come this one is called the cQ-Volume DATR StdDev Inverted. That's what this multiplier does. So I'm also going to have one that is an inverted one, but it uses the ATR and standard deviation to invert it. One that uses moving average and standard deviation, and then the normal standard deviation that you would expect standard deviation to behave. Anyway, that's why there's going to be 3 more indicators of this type of the cQ-Volume DATR, but this last part of the name will change. So, okay, the band modes, there's 2. The dual channel is what you see down here, right here in this, the blue and red. And all the single channel is the blue and red summed together divided by 2. And then these parameters here don't change at all between these modes, so they behave as you would expect. And the way this indicator actually works is there's 2 standard deviation buffers in here. One that behaves normally as you would expect, and its period here is 20, and deviation is set to 4. And then there's this inverted band, and right now this is set at 34. Generally, you try to keep these 2 periods somewhat close, and getting above 50, it doesn't work as well. You can try it and see what you come up with. The inverted one is subtracted from the one that goes up. Okay, for example, if I make this 6, it went higher, very few of the bars are being hit. So if you go down here and you will increase this invert multiplier, so it pushes it back down. So, and if you, for example, if you shorten this up, you can see what that does. That's, for this particular indicator, that's what it does. The others that are coming out, the other inverted ones, are similar in design. One's going to be a moving average, for example. You're going to subtract the standard deviation from it. The other ones, we use the ATR, and you'll subtract the standard deviation from it. So if you're on the dual channel, this output channels can be reversed. And this is, you definitely should use this or give it a try, because it will make some of them really good. They'll just work all of a sudden, like you're not getting anything, or you don't like what you're getting, and just try inverting it and see what that does. This is the minimum level. It's not normalized, so this too has no correlation with these values over here. I just had to pick a number, and it works across the time frames, and because it's just using the ATR of the candles, so it will remain consistent across them all, but the number doesn't mean anything. And then there's if you put this histogram, use 4 colors, it will use these 4 colors. Or you can go back to false and have it set to gray right here. I have a number of presets. I just went through and just started making some. I didn't put any other indicators on it other than probably one of these, this baseline. You could stick your baseline on there. You can load one of these presets, and they'll be in the zip file, and then you can go in and change things from there. The next thing I'd like to do is show you how to find a good setting for your algorithm. The first thing you do is put your baseline indicator on the chart. And this is a new one. It's a baseline trend direction, but I'm just going to use it for reference. And then what you do is you put some vertical lines on areas where you would like to enter the trades. Okay. I mean, you may not get them, but you can at least start with something like that. For example, I'll put it here, and that should be good enough for now. The next thing you do is you set the deviation to 0 and the minimum level multiplier to 0. And I'm just going to use a 10 SMA for both the DATR moving average type and the bands moving average type. Okay, so that's what you try to do is for example, this is a downtrend. We're going to try and scoot this over a little. So we'll shorten this. Try 8. Okay, it made it there. Didn't make it there, but it got it on that one, which is not much different. And there's one, it made it there. This one made it. So the next thing you do is turn up the deviation and try and remove some of the false volume indications, which that's a little low. We'll try 1.2. It'd be nice to get rid of that. For example, this line probably has to come up.